Delighted on this episode to be talking with prolific author Jim Butcher. Jim, thank you for joining.
Hey, hello.
Hi, hi. Great to connect with you. And I know that we're talking about a book by the name of 12 Months on this episode, but this is, of course, a book that's been in a long-standing series of yours, I believe, going back all the way to 2000. Is that right? Is that when the
Correct.
Dresden Files began?
April 1st, 2000, my first book.
Yeah, yeah. What makes this the space? What makes fantasy, science fiction, the go-to place for you when you're sharing your ideas?
Um, I just like all the trappings there. Just when I was growing up, some of the first books I remember reading are Rudyard Kipling's Jungle books and the Narnia books, and those were followed up pretty rapidly by the Pride Inc. Chronicles by Lloyd Alexander,
Mhm.
by The Hobbit, and Lord of the Rings. Before long, I was a dual citizen of the United States and Amber and Gore and Narnia and many other places that I would just go to on a regular basis. I would spend all my time in school reading, which frustrated my teachers to no end because I wasn't reading textbooks. I was reading fantasy and science fiction. And so when I decided to go into writing, that was what I wanted to be doing.
So, what a great problem for a teacher to have, a kid reading in class. That's
Yeah,
that's got
yeah.
to be up there. Yeah. Now you've been with this character for quite some time, as we were saying, since April 2000. What's it been like to share this story over that time, and what has
Oh,
that longevity allowed you to do?
longer than that. I think I wrote the first book in '96. It
Oh,
took a while
nice.
to get out and get published and so on. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of like living with a roommate who's a lot. I mean, like a lot of fun, yeah, at the right times, but but also a lot.
Yeah.
And so Dresden is kind of a fun guy to hang out with, but when you're doing it for months and months and months at a time, occasionally I get tired of the guy, and I want to go out and write some other books because it's okay. Well, I've been dealing with your drama long enough,
Right.
and when I go and write another book, I'm writing in third person, which means I get to a very completely different approach to storytelling that you can take. There's so many more things you can do in third person than you can in first person, which is another way of saying there's more rope with which to hang yourself as an artist. But I enjoy. I mean, I always enjoy. By the time I'm done with the side project and I'm going back to Dresden, I'm always happy to be getting in the saddle with Harry Dresden again. I'm always happy to see him. But I couldn't just write book after book after book after book. I would lose my mind, and the books wouldn't be very fun either.
The creative reservoirs, right? You have to refill those in some way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Uh, in this latest book, we have Harry on quite the journey, and I know that a lot has happened to this character, as the book says he's been through the ringer. And so, curious about what you kept in mind for the character as you were crafting this newest entry.
I wanted to write for a long time. Dresden's been involved in a lot of stuff, and he has been through the ringer in a bunch of different things, as you say. And particularly in the last couple of books, things got real serious. Um, and by the time I had written that, I had realized, okay, we've kind of gotten this big, lowercase a apocalyptic battle going on in Chicago. We've lost friends and allies, people that he's known for a long time. And I was planning originally on writing a book called Mirror Mirror next, which Harry Dresden goes to a parallel universe where that's one choice different than his universe, and that one choice was a very significant one. But I realized I sat down and started writing it, and I realized, wait a minute, I'm essentially I'm going to be sending him next into this parallel universe, and he's going to have like one person that he can talk to that's from home, during the whole course of the story, and and yet he's still going to have all this heavy duty emotional baggage to deal with from the events of the last couple books. And if I didn't deal with it in a serious way, I knew that it would greatly reduce the impact of those books. The impact that it had on the story, on the characters, and on the readers. So I realized, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to have to deal with this. So it's like, okay, I'm going to have to deal with writing, how you handle this kind of grief, this kind of post traumatic stress. Uh, he's been doing this for years and it's finally caught up to him. So how are we going to handle that? So I had to write it as realistically as I could, except that dealing with it in real life is like it is simultaneously the most unpleasant and most boring thing you've ever done. I mean, at the same time, handling that kind of stuff and processing that kind of, those kind of negative emotions, it's hard work, it's boring work, it's not a lot of fun. So it's like, okay, I got to figure out how to write about this and still make it entertaining. Which was the main thing that I was putting in there. Is how do I stay true to make this psychologically accurate for the character and yet still make it, let's have a good time with the reader. We're gonna have fun. Figuring out how to do that, we're gonna have fun while we deal with a story that's basically about grief and how you handle it. And that was very much a challenge for me. So putting that together, I was drawing on some of my own experiences, on experiences of people that I've been close to when they've gone through them, and uh, it was a difficult book to write. I was kind of dipping my ink into my own blood and writing a lot for this one. But on the other hand, I think it was a book that a lot of people needed. The past several years, the past 5 6 years have been rough for a lot of folks. Especially going back to the pandemic and the damage that got inflicted there in all kinds of different ways. And there were a lot of people who've lost folks. And every night when I was doing signings on the tour, I had people coming up to me and telling me these stories, about the things they'd gone through that were a much deeper and more vicious hell than anything I could have come up with for a fictional character. Because the difference between life and fiction is that fiction has to make sense and life doesn't. And so occasionally, I've heard stories from people where they just had multiple years of horror heaped upon them, and they were trying to come through it. And they'd say, "Hey, this book put a bunch of my feelings into words that I hadn't been able to before, and I was able to talk to my partner about it, and things have changed for us, as a result." And so I feel good about that. But God, I mean, just sort of hearing some of the stuff that I have, I kind of feel like I'm playing with radioactive materials here, and I'm just basically this derpy kid who's writing his dumb wizard stories, and let's have a good time. It's like, okay, I want to address this and I want to take it seriously and do it justice and everything. But then you start to hear some stories about what people have gone through in real life, and it's like, oh my God, I need to be harder on my characters, or the world needs to become a kinder place. One of the two.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully that latter one. Hopefully that latter one.
Yeah, yeah, I would much prefer that one.
Yeah. I was going to ask about parts of daily life that inspire your work because science fiction and fantasy have this great duality in that you're entering these worlds that are so different and yet they're not so different. So it sounds like you were able to tap into some of your experiences and some of the other things that have happened the past few years as well.
Well, all writers do that to some degree.
Hmm.
I mean, whether you realize it or not, you'll go back years later and read stuff that you wrote 20 years ago, and then realize, oh my gosh, I was talking about this part of my life and I didn't even realize it. Your writers are basically, we're all just doing therapy, and you're writing it down and then monetizing it.
Absolutely. It's a shared experience. It's a
Yeah, yeah,
shared therapy, right?
it is. It is. I mean, hopefully we're making it fun enough that other people are entertained while we're going along the way. So.
Yeah. Now, where would you like to go next in the journey, having spent this time on this most recent book? Anything that you'd like to hint at about where you're testing your abilities next?
Oh, I'm about 40% of the way through Mirror Mirror, the next Dresden book.
Mhm.
I want to have it done. I wanted to have it done by the end of spring. It might take me a little bit longer, a few weeks longer than that. But that's where I'm focused on next is getting the next Dresden done, and then after that, I'll go to do the next steampunk novel.
Nice, nice. Uh, any elements of your creative process that especially work well for you before we get to the final question?
Um, well, I mean, I've really enjoyed the use that AI has been in research. You go to like
Mhm.
ChatGPT or something. ChatGPT, you don't want to ask it about anything that's real, but as long as you're talking about stuff that's fictional anyway, it's okay if it starts hallucinating and gives you a wrong answer, as long as the answer is good for story. So it's it's not really so dangerous. It's a very useful tool for me. So I went, when I was doing research, writing short stories after I finished the last novel. It's like, okay, I want to write a short story, and I want to use a folklore monster that we don't really see a lot. So it's like, okay, I want to use a Tatzelworm because we haven't seen Tatzelworms around a whole bunch. and they're
Mm-hmm.
they're an alpine monster. So it's like, okay, so I wanted to do all the research on the tassel worms, and I went to the AI and said, all right, I want you to give me all the information that English sites have on tassel worms, and go. I want you to go out and check German and Scandinavian language sites as well, and then translate those and give me the information from there too. And and they they went out and found a bunch of university stuff that was from German universities that I would never have run across myself, just because I don't speak any German, but it went out and found the stuff for me and was able to translate the sites. I was able to go and look at them. And, ooh, this is great. This is great information here. And, here's stuff that I hadn't realized about this particular monster, but here it is. From these various reports across the centuries that they've actually kept in place. And so for that, I think AI has been really useful as a research assistant. It's been fantastic. For just researching folklore. I'm not sure I would trust it if I was trying to build something that I didn't want to fall down. Uh, uh, but
Right.
uh, but when it comes to just storytelling, it's fantastic. It's a great resource.
Yeah, AI does this amazing stuff, and I feel like as science fiction fans and writers and people, there's a side of me that looks at it and then goes, "Yeah, Asimov, like it's here,
Right.
it's here. That makes sense. It makes sense."
There is, I mean, it does do some cool stuff. That is for sure. I think though it's probably going to be a couple of generations before we really have an AI that has started to, actually understand the real world a little bit more and to function better. Um,
True.
just being built on the large language model as it is, basically its job is just to pick the next most likely word.
Yep.
That's kind of the whole thing it does. But that said, uh, I mean, I'm sure people had, we had a limited basis for interacting with the world too until we started developing a lot of different, mental and physical tools to let us do that. Among them language.
Hmm.
And AI is now building its own language. So, I mean, it's definitely off and running as its own, as its own kind of individual life form. I don't know what we're going to do with it, but a bunch of movies that I grew up watching have suggested that perhaps we're in trouble. So,
Yes. Again, we'll hope for optimism, but we're also steeped in story, so we know.
yeah, yeah. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. You'll never be disappointed.
That's right. That's right. If I'm a listener and I want to find out more about you, any particular spaces, book signings online, or anything like that that you'd like to mention.
You can always go by my website at jimbutcheronline.com. We're working on opening up a merch store now so that we can produce some products, will be official Dresden Files products for the fans who want to come see those. We've got a few so far, but we're still sort of building up to kind of building up an inventory of what we can offer. I'm making a deal with a bunch of artists because basically to run the store. I'm just going to an artist and saying, hey, I want to use some of the art that you've already done for Dresden Files, and we'll put it in the store and we'll sell it to people, and then we'll split the profits. How does that sound? Because they say to try and build the world you want to live in, and I want to live in a world where artists have a little bit more respect. So I'm
Yes.
paying them a bit
Yes.
better than they're normally used to, but that's okay. Um, because really, I'm not doing this to, I'm not opening the merch store as much to raise money as to kind of, well, it'll be good advertising for the series, and it's going to make the fans happy, and that's always they're who I actually work for. The publishers and the editors and so on. I mean, they can try and tell me things, and we've kind of worked out exactly how far they can make me go and how far they can't make me go. But the fans are my actual bosses because they're the ones who have my back. As long as they have my back, I'm fine everywhere else. So I want to take care of them.
Well said. Well said.